Good morning. You're listening to WPVM LP in Asheville, North Carolina, 103.7 on your dial. This is the BLAINESWORLD show, and we're heard each Wednesday at 9 a.m., and you can also watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations throughout both Western North Carolina and the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce kind of a long-term time friend of mine, Michelle Marshall. And Michelle, you can wave to all your fans and friends on Facebook. So if you're watching Michelle, you should know that she is a native-born Canadian, and she moved to the United States in 1977, later calling Asheville her home in 2005, when she and her partner, Linda Patterson, drove their new fifth-wheel, I love it, travel trailer south, falling in love with the Blue Ridge Mountains. She is a certified Zentangle teacher, sharing her passion with students near and far. And Michelle, before we go any further, I guess I should ask you this question. And so you were born in Canada, and as a little girl, did you know you wanted to be a certified Zentangle teacher?
As a little girl, no.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, as a little girl, then what did you want to be?
Grown up.
Did you want to be an artist?
No, I used to love drawing, and I did a lot of it during class. And about 12 years old, I was enthralled with Katie Keene, who was a comic book character who wore these gorgeous long dresses, form-fitting. And one day I was drawing her without her dress, and the nun caught me, shamed me, and in front of all my peers, and I didn't draw from then on until much later in life.
Well, it's funny you say that because you were talking about drawing, and I have a friend who'd always drawing, and I guess at the time they called it doodling, or that was kind of what they called it then. And she would doodle all the time. But your story is interesting in that you did this, and you got caught, and you really stopped. What got you back into it?
Well, probably in my 40s, I met a woman who taught decorative art, oil painting. She had a fine arts background, so I decided to take a class. And the first project was doing an apple. Being who I am, I did 7 apples. I still have the tray today, and I learned a lot about color and copying other people's art. But my creativity was not awoken yet. And it was when I moved to Asheville and met Barry Barton through the Jubilee community,
Sure.
And she was doing a production called Secrets. And that was really stepping outside of my box. I do not like to be front stage. And she gave me a solo. And for 3 nights I proclaimed, and a lot more creativity is waiting to express itself. Shortly after that, I got into an art class with Damaris Pierce, who I had tried several times to get into, doing a class called 30 Drawings in 30 Days. And in one of the classes during that session, she introduced Zentangle. And it started to wake up my inner artist. And my very first piece as a result of that class became one of my art cards. She suggested, I guess that was in the fall, and I guess in January, she suggested that we go become certified Zentangle teachers. Well, other than that one class with her and maybe looking online and some books, I didn't know the whole principle of Zentangle. So I signed up, we went, and Maria Thomas and Rick Roberts, who are the founders of Zentangle, which has now become a worldwide phenomenon, were teaching that. They teach all their certified teachers. And they are amazing. They're so passionate about what they do. And they really have this principle of Zentangle should be fun, relaxing, and, you create these beautiful designs, images with all these structured patterns that they've created and other people have.
Well, let me ask you this, Michelle, then. For the people who don't know what Zentangle is, I'll put you on the spot. If you give us the kind of the Reader's Digest version of what Zentangle is.
Well, it is, if you can use a pen, a pencil, and this little paper tortillon, let's see if I can get it up there. And you start on these little squares, you can do anything with Zentangle because there are no mistakes, no opportunities. One deliberate stroke at a time, following directions, you can create something beautiful.
Well, that sounds like my kind of art, that no mistakes. I really like that idea.
And if you can make a period, draw a line, and it doesn't have to be straight, make an orb, make an S, make a C. A lot of those components are in Zentangle itself.
Well, what's cool about it too, Michelle, in that I know a little bit through my wife had taken a course or courses with you, and it seems like it's a lot of fun for the people who do it. It's just they just get into it and have a good time.
Yes, it is. And it's what I stress frequently throughout the class, that there are no mistakes. And a lot of people come to me and they say, but I'm not an artist.
Right.
Can't draw a straight line. It doesn't matter. I don't have an artistic bone in my body. I said, just follow along and see. Now I have Peggy Crow is a friend of mine who's known about Zentangle for a long time. Am I teaching it? And she just started my basics class, session, which is 3 classes. I want to switch to my camera and just show you.
Sure.
Read to you. But she said anyone who knows me gets that I have 0 artistic skill. Leave it up to Michelle Marshall to prove me wrong, even on my first try. So I'm going to switch to my camera just to show you and our audience what she created, her very first class. So let me get this out of the way.
By the way, as Michelle's getting set up, I should just mention, if you're listening to us on the radio, Michelle is showing some of her artwork. And again, we'll invite you to take a look, if you want, at the Facebook Live video. It'll be on Facebook as well. But Michelle, if you would maybe just kind of describe it as well, because if people can't see it, you can at least tell them what they're seeing.
The first one is 4 different tangle patterns. And this was mine that I did in class as I guided her through with the camera. And this is what she produced.
Now, this was her first
first try.
Wow, is that beautiful?
She was excited. And she said, oh, this one looks like a Christmas tree.
It does.
The second tile that we did was this one, which again had 3 different, it was a different string, and it had 3 different patterns. This is what she created. And she was so excited, she posted it on Facebook, and that's where this comment comes from. And she's looking forward to class 2 and 3, where I go deeper into what a string is and deeper into the magic of Zentangle, which is the shades of gray that take it from 2-dimension to 3 dimensions and lifts it off the paper. And if you want, for the people who are watching, I can do a quick demo of how that happens.
Okay, yeah, if you would please, that'd be cool. So if you're listening, Michelle is talking about something known as Zentangle, and she's going to show us now, and you can describe it as you go, Michelle, what you're doing.
Okay, I just, with my pencil, made a cursive V type thing. And from there, I'm going to do the first pattern called Perk. Now, all the patterns have names. Some of them were really strange, but that's what they're called. And this one is Perk. And it is, I laid down 2 lines. I laid a line down and then gave it an aura, which just came off it from a little bit. And then I left some space and then did another line and gave it an aura. Now I'm going to do an orb in the middle. And then I'm going to do some orbs on either side of it. So it's going to look like this. And I'm going to show you a little part of it later But because we don't have a lot of time, I'm just going to show you another pattern that I'm doing with this. And this one is called Shattuck, Shattuck. And it's a series of auras. You lay down one line and then you put another one a little bit apart from it, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, and go up. And you get this beautiful look. And it flows.
And by the way, what Michelle is doing in terms of doing the drawing here is stuff that anybody could do. In other words, no offense to you, Michelle, but doesn't look like, so far, this requires great artistic ability.
No, it doesn't. It just requires the willingness to try and to work with it. So now this is Perk, and this is Shattuck, and this is what it looks like when I'm finished doing all the drawing. And I added another pattern called Printemps, which is spring in French, and it kind of looks like a little spring. So here you can see I've laid that out. Now it's two-dimensional. It's okay. Look at what happens with the magic. Is I added some graphite with my graphite pencil. I added it down, pointing it towards the edge. And then I just took my magic tortillon, my little magic wand, and made shades of gray with it. Now, look at the difference between where we started and where we finished.
Now, you mentioned adding shades of gray. So is this all black and white and gray, or can there be color in it as well?
Good question. All right, so this here is from an advanced class. We've got patterns in there, and I did a little flower in there. But over here, because of Ukraine, here we have a sunflower.
Beautiful.
I've used some of the Zentangle patterns in there and used colored pencil. And in my advanced classes, I show them how to use colored pencil. Or I watercolor pencil that is also fun. Now this is another one sunflower I did, a little more stylistic, and I've used the Zentangle patterns in the leaves, and I used a pattern for the background, and then I did these little orbs that are called tipple, and then made them look like little gems. And you can do that with color, and I teach people how, and I used, in this particular one, I've used watercolor pen, I've used chalk pastels, and just created this beautiful thing with color. But when we start with basics, we start with the black and white realm. This is in the second session of the basics class.
Now,
and then this was in an advanced class. Look how intricate that can be.
Now let me ask you, Michelle, can you also use this for doing, I'll call it traditional art? In other words, if you want, I haven't seen it, but could you use these techniques to draw a picture of a person?
You know what? I just happen to have.
Oh, very cool.
Happen to have that one I wanted to show you. It's in black and white, and I've used various tangles around them. You can use somebody's face in there if you wanted to. You can take somebody's dog, draw that if you're an artist, and then do tangles to fill it in. This is another one I did. One of my favorites here is called Heart Song. And so I've used it. I don't know where it came from. My imagination goes off on tangents at the time, but that's it. And you can see if I get off camera now, and if you put me on, you can see behind me this picture here. And here I did a cat, the silhouette of a cat up in this one.
Now, let me ask you this. In terms of your practice, we'll talk about your teaching in just a second, but in terms of you being an artist, is this something you do every day?
A lot of times with teaching, I'm preparing for the next classes, and I teach one advanced and one beginners a week. But I have decided to go back to that 30 drawings in 30 days to stimulate, because I want to get back to my own art. I've created some beautiful pieces that I need to take to the printers and get printed. And they will become art cards or prints. And I was in several galleries before we went off in our RV, that we rented our house and bought an RV and went off for 2 years. We stayed out for 2.5 with the plans to stay out longer, and COVID hit. National parks closed down. We were in Winslow, Arizona on Route 40 and said, time to go home. And so we came back. But and I taught when I was on the road.
But when you were on the road, were you doing art yourself also?
Yes, I created some beautiful pieces that I found today that I'm going to take to the printers and get them.
Because I was wondering, is this something to, like they say, some artists, get up every morning. Like, I love your idea of 30 drawings in 30 days. How long does a drawing take you?
When I get into very intricate drawings, they can take many, many hours, and I'll think I'm done, and I'll go away, and I'll come back. And Linda laughs all the time. I'll say, I'm done this one. And then next thing you know, I'm adding something, doing something with it. And so they can take 10, 15 hours on a piece, so color and all that.
Do you tell your students, for example, though, to get good in this or proficient in it, you have to do it every day, or,
I suggest if they want to get better and better at it. I mean, these tiles aren't very big. They're 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Play with it. Play with the patterns. When we finish a class, I'll say, do it again. And because you might make what you think is a mistake, but it's an opportunity, and it's going to create something different. And you never do the same thing twice. It just kind of changes around, and it becomes very... that you've got into the relaxation part of it, the Zen part of it, when you just tangle and you don't know where you're going. You don't know where you're going, and you're surprised at the ending. So it's very structured in class, but if you're doing it on your own, there's many things. I still make opportunities, and I'll look and I'll go, okay, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to finish what I'm doing. And then some brilliant idea comes up on how to deal with that opportunity. Or if you make an opportunity, you just repeat it so it looks intentional.
Talk about the size of this. You mentioned these tiles that people do, but it can be larger than that. Is that correct? And behind you.
Let me grab one.
Okay, and we're talking with Michelle Marshall about her Zentangle work, and she's right now trying to show us a larger picture she's done. And just again, here it is. Okay, and again, I'll invite listeners, if they are listening to this, to please look at the WPVM Facebook page, because you'll be able to see the video presentation of this if you like. You'll get a better feel of some of the artwork that Michelle is showing. So I see it, Michelle. So these are definitely larger than little squares.
This is 10 by 10.
Wow.
See the size of it? And this I actually taught in a class. And so everybody created something beautiful with it. Often I work on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a birthday message of some sort?
Yeah, and it's going to become a card. This is one of the pieces I created when I was out on the road that I just absolutely love.
And I love the color in it too.
Yeah. And, I've got a hummingbird, because there was a lot of hummingbirds in the desert. We saw a lot of monarchs, a lot of ravens out west. This is another one. So you can see, you can get really big. And I incorporate some of the patterns, but I also come up with artistic ways and this is one of my favorites as well.
And talk about something else, Michelle, that you alluded to, that you offer, but conceivably students of yours could do this as well. And one of the nice things about this artwork is that you can do it, but then you can turn it into other things. And talk a little bit about the fact, you mentioned greeting cards, for example.
All
Talk
right.
about that process.
Well, what I do is I've recently taken to, let me go back on screen, taking some of the tiles I've created and I'm putting them on cards so that, and I'm going to sell them as original pieces of art. But see, you can do that. I have students who make cards. Let me read one of the, I asked my students for some testimonials, and
Sure.
one who has got a fine arts background. I'm
Right.
going to go off camera here. She said, Zentangle is a perfect art form for my lifestyle, which involves a lot of traveling. She's an RVer. It is a compact, portable, and delightful way to create imaginative, organic, colorful pieces while connecting and socializing with friends and sharing ideas. We have so much fun. Zentangle is quite adaptable to a whole range of artistic venues, great for cards and framed drawings. I'm also decorating mats to frame pictures, machine quilting fabric pieces, and enjoying using my imagination for my next project, a table runner and placemats using Zentangle designs. So,
It also seems, Michelle, to be like a perfect gift to give to somebody, that you've created and that you share your stuff with other people. Very exciting to be able to do that.
yes, and a lot of my students do create cards. They might do it right on cardstock that you buy at Michael's, some blank cards, and they create that card special for that person. And I've done that myself for special birthdays or whatever. I incorporate some of their loves of life all within this Zentangle of design.
Talk about the process in terms of the name itself. So, Tangle, I kind of get. Talk about the Zen aspect of it, and talk about what happens when you're doing the work, or even when you teach a class. What happens?
Well, the Zen part of it is getting into that relaxed state. Now, how it got that name was Maria, who very talented artist who owned her own business. Maria, who's one of the founders, was in her art studio, and her husband stood at the door and watched her. And he had been a Buddhist monk at one point, and he just watched, and he could see that she was in a state that he worked 17 years to get into. And so he asked her what she was doing. And within the framework of a letter that was outlined, she was doing these patterns. And she had gotten lost into it. It was just flowing. And they got so excited looking at it and realizing, wow, and they started showing family and friends all this, and and look at you can do, and it was totally free form. It's abstract, and so that's where people can, not feel, they can relax into it and not be judgmental.
How
And
old is Zentangle? When did it start?
it started in 2003.
Oh,
That was the
okay.
very beginnings, and it spread from this tiny town in Whitensville, Massachusetts. And believe me, I've been there. It's a small town. They started having small conferences in people's homes, and then they moved to a big hotel in Providence, Rhode Island, where I took my training. And now they've had to move to an even bigger one. But they have taught in Taiwan, in China, England, France. They've gone there. Now they've really gotten a few people who are following their principles, teaching in those areas. And it just has grown and grown and grown since 2003.
And talk about your involvement in it in terms of you had started taking some courses, and then when did you decide you want to become certified in it, and talk about what that entailed?
Well, it was very simple. Damaris Pierce said, let's go get certified. I mean, I really didn't know what Zentangle was. I had done that one class with her, but I tend to go outside the box a lot. And I said, why not? Let's go. And I mean, I was overwhelmed. There were 110 people in my class from all over the world. And I really knew very little about Zentangle, but Maria would be instructing, or one of her daughters, or Rick. And I'm at the end of each class, they would have us take our tiles and put them on this big table and create a mosaic. 110 people, 110 versions.
Of,
So
of the same of the same thing?
same patterns, but they all, and one of them I had made an oops in it and had an oops eternity, but I could find mine in the 110. And it didn't look bad, I mean, it was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Mine is very unique.
By the way, I love what you just, I haven't heard that before. I love it. What do you call it? Oops
Eternity.
I love that. So when you make a mistake, that's what you call it?
Yeah, an oops eternity.
So you went through the certification process. Now let's talk a little bit about your teaching of this, because I know that Cynthia, has taken courses with you, and lots of other people have. What does that involve? So you sign up a course, and what happens?
For a person who signs up in a course?
Yeah, right.
Well, they get some supplies, their pen, their pencil, their tortillons, some of the tiles, and there's a 2-hour instruction. I have people sign up for 3 classes in the session, so they really are getting the basics. The first time is just acquainting themselves with Zentangle and what it is. And the second time they're learning about strings, which is the frames that you create to put your patterns in. If you look at this one that I showed, this is one of the strings that then you put different things in. So strings are, they're done in pencil. So they're just a guideline. You can go over them. You can jump that fence anytime. And then the third class, the shades of gray come. It's using the graphite and learning how to gently tease the tile to get that third dimensional look. And it takes a while to really get used to that, but at least that's the basics of it. And then I do a second session that's still basics, and they get more supplies. They're working on a round Zentangle tile. They are working on a beige or Renaissance tile, and they're working on a black tile. And so those are the real basics. And after that, they can shift over into the advanced class and whatever we're doing at that time. And then we can learn more about color using various things. And I'm constantly taking classes to enrich myself so I can pass it on to my students.
So each set of classes, there are 3 classes in each.
That's how
grouping?
I like to do it. I am going to be doing an introductory class at the Purple Crayon up in North Asheville, April 23rd, I think it is, where we'll just do that one, and they'll get to know. We'll be doing that tile I showed you. Let me hold that one up if I can find it. Here it is. Something like this. Ooh, okay. And that just gives them a feeling of what are the patterns, a little bit about strings, a little bit about creating the box that they're going to work in, a little bit about how to shade. So it just introduces them to the world of wonderful patterns and relaxation. And the other thing is it helps people with focus. It helps hand-eye coordination, all while you're there playing, basically.
And Michelle, I'll ask you to repeat that in just a second, but what's exciting about this is that you'll actually then be in front of students again, as opposed, now, the last couple of years you've been doing this via Zoom?
I have been doing it by Zoom, yes. I started taking classes on Zoom, and my people that I knew met while we were traveling who had taken classes kept saying, I wish we could get a class from you. So I finally got over my fear of technology, bought a document camera, and started teaching it. Okay. And
And the
They
rest
were
is
willing
history.
to. Hmm?
And the rest is history. And we're
And the
here
rest is
tonight.
history. But it's going to be exciting teaching at Purple Crayon. I have not taught in person in 3 years. And I used to teach in my art
I
studio
remember, yeah.
in West Asheville, but we no longer have that space. So,
Michelle, in conclusion, if folks want to find out more about you or the work you do, let's talk about two ways. So when they can go to your website, and the website is what?
www.martialartsavl.com. So Marshall, my name, arts. Sort of a play on martial arts.
Okay, and that's spelled with two L's, right? Martial
Two
arts.
L's, yeah.
Great.
And I'm on Facebook under Michelle Marshall.
And then the
And
course you
also,
mentioned?
what's that?
The course you mentioned. How do they find out about that course?
They can find out about it on my website, or they best want to maybe contact me on my email, which is TRIPLEM for my initial GRO@msn.com.
Okay. I'd like to thank you, Michelle Marshall, for being my guest this first half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show, and also for sharing your beautiful artwork. So really appreciate it, and we'll hopefully see you in person sometime in the next couple of years.
Well, hopefully soon.
Okay. Hey, you
Thank
be well.
you so much.
Good
I
seeing
had
you,
a
Michelle.
blast.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Okay. And as Michelle disappears and our next guest works her way into the waiting room, into the studio, let me mention that you're listening to WPVM, and our mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution, and you can do so by going to the website wpvmfm.org and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. My next guest is Dr. Beth Hampton Jones, DVM. She's a veterinarian. And welcome aboard, Dr. Beth. You can wave to all your friends in Facebook world. Okay? And if any of your dog clients are watching too, they'll see you as well. And I should mention, Dr. Beth has been a veterinarian for 29 years. You started what, at the age of 7?
Yeah, I started really young.
So, I know, I can't believe it. 20 of those years involved, now this is, I got to find out more about, involved with animal acupuncture. Nashville native, wow, you were actually born and raised in Nashville?
Well, technically I wasn't born here because my father got transferred,
Right.
but my mom's family has been here since the 1800s. So I went to Asheville High and went to school through all here. I was not technically born here, but we moved back when I was 2.
Well, let me ask you the question, and I should mention that Dr. Beth then went to North Carolina State College of Veterinary Medicine and got into this field. And the question, Dr. Beth, I ask is that when you were a little girl growing up in Asheville at the age of 2, did you always know you wanted to be a veterinarian?
I did actually always know that. From very, very young, I knew that I wanted to be a vet.
Did your family have lots of pets?
We had pets over the years, yeah, dogs, cats, fish, rabbits, hamsters, mostly at my insistence.
What's really cool is that most kids, don't know what they're going to do at a very young age. But that's really cool that you did. You just always loved working with animals?
I did. I just always really wanted to do that. My mom wanted me to be a pediatrician, which is a fine career, but I just always wanted to be with animals.
Okay. So you then went to high school, graduate school training, became a veterinarian. Let's talk about the process you were telling me off the air, that you were what might be called, I guess, a traditional veterinarian. You did the mom and pop stuff what veterinarians do. Was it out of your house, or you had an office, or where do you practice?
No, for a long time, I had a practice in Lenore, North Carolina. I moved away and came back, and it was a general practice. It was a fairly big practice, 3.5 doctor, full service hospital that I sold about 10 years ago and moved back to Asheville.
And when you moved back to Asheville, was this still a general practice, or you were specializing in animal acupuncture?
When I moved back, I made a smaller practice and focused on acupuncture and laser and Chinese herbal medicine. So for the last 10 years, I've only done that, but I've been doing acupuncture for about 20 years now.
And let's talk a little bit about this. So in terms of acupuncture, I'm vaguely familiar with it in terms of people getting acupuncture, but until Cappy, my producer, mentioned you as, being one of our guests on animal acupuncture, I have to tell you I wasn't familiar with it. I guess a lot of people aren't familiar with it. Is that a true statement?
It is true, but it's less true now than it used to be. When I first started, I got a lot more, oh my gosh, you can do acupuncture and dogs and cats even. And now, especially living in Asheville where people are open to alternative treatment options, I get less of that, but still there's a lot of people that don't realize it's an option.
Now, is your practice primarily with dogs, or you do dogs and cats?
I do dogs and cats.
Okay, any other animals?
That's all for now. I wanted to do horses, but it's just a different, the needles are different and you have to be mobile, to get to the horses. So that's always been a little logistically challenging.
And so I can't bring my pet snake there either yet, or not?
No, I used to do snake. I didn't do acupuncture on snakes, but yeah, you can imagine they're not so keen on it. So.
Well, talk about how you even learn how to do acupuncture on a pet. In others, before that, had you experienced acupuncture or used it?
I had not had acupuncture on myself. After I'd been in vet about 10 years, I thought, I feel like I should be able to offer more to my patient. And so I got interested in doing it. Now in school, we had to do acupuncture on ourselves to practice. But now I regularly go to acupuncture because I'm a big believer.
Okay. So you were in school, you were just practicing on each other though, is that correct?
Yeah, mainly on ourselves. As a new student, you really don't want other people sticking needles in you. So we just stuck them in our own bodies.
But that was for veterinary school. They were teaching it when you went?
So when I started in acupuncture, there weren't any veterinary schools that taught acupuncture.
Sure.
That's not true now. They do. There are a couple that do. But in North Carolina, you have to be a licensed veterinarian to do acupuncture on animals. And so starting from that point, then I got specialty training in acupuncture at what was called, still is called, the International Veterinary Acupuncture Society. That's based in Colorado, but they move around to different parts of the country annually and give people that opportunity. So my acupuncture training was beyond my veterinary training.
And talk about acupuncture then for pets. We'll primarily talk about cats and dogs. What does it do for them?
Well, so acupuncture is based on a series of what we call meridians or channels in the body. They have different names. There's points along those meridians, and the points certain points help with certain things. Now, for me, most of my patients come to me for pain-related problems, arthritis, after surgery, knee problems, back problems, things like that. That's the majority of my patients come for pain relief. But I do have ones that come for anxiety and allergies and some other things too. You can treat kidney disease and liver disease. It's one of the good things about acupuncture is my patients tend to come regularly. So I really know them. I know my patient. If they come one time and everything looks good, and then 2 weeks later I hear a heart murmur, I can just, I really know my patients, and I can find problems in them earlier and give them guidance on quality of life, which is really so important because a lot of my patients are senior patients.
I love listening to you talk about your patients. It's just so sweet to hear, and they get to know them. I guess, in a sense, you become also, I guess you have to be an animal communicator. You have to...
people talk about being an animal communicator, and I've never called myself that.
Sure.
But you really do when you spend that much time with a patient, you really do get to know them and how they react to things, and the people too, the clients too. I have the best clients in the world. So
Yeah, but I love listening to you talking about it, talk about your patients and get to know them. But let's talk a bit about the process, because Cynthia, my wife, and I often talk about it. We have an older cat, and we wonder, and I'll put you on the spot to ask you about this, that animals, or some animals, don't show pain, or cats less so than, is it dogs show pain more than cats in general? Is that a true statement?
mm, yeah, I would say so, but it's an interesting point because when I was first a veterinarian, in the first few years, we had a new pain medicine for dogs. Before that, we didn't really have great pain medicine for dogs. Like, we would occasionally give an aspirin, which is not really recommended. But we came to learn that it's not that they don't feel pain, they just exhibit it in a different way, because we would give a dog something that was purely pain medicine, and then they would act like they were 5 years younger. So I've seen dogs come in my general practice with their leg broken, like they were hit by a car or something like that. Their leg is hanging there clearly broken, and they're wagging their tail. I mean, it absolutely hurts. They exhibit pain different than we do, and so we were behind in providing good pain relief for our pets.
How do you know if a pet is in pain?
Well, there are some ways you can tell. For one, they'll, if they're like their leg hurts or their hip hurts or something, they'll limp, not want to bear weight. Some of them may not eat as well. Some of them may shiver. They may be reluctant to do things they would have done before, like jump on the couch or things like that. And sometimes it's a lot more subtle than what you would expect.
And so, if somebody sees their dog in pain, or they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, they make an appointment with you. And now I have to ask you, because again, my wife and I were trying to figure this out. What happens at that point in time? So they come in, you do an examination, and then what do you do at that point in time?
Okay, well, it kind of depends on where they have come from, because most of my patients also have what I call a regular vet.
Right.
So sometimes they come with a workup, like they have x-rays and blood work and all that. And if they do, then I have a lot of clues as to what's going on with them. Let's assume that's the case to start with. And let's assume that a dog comes in and he has hip dysplasia, which means hip joint doesn't fit completely right. So we may have some arthritis around there. And that happens to be a condition acupuncture is very good for. But I have them come in, and if it's their first visit, I kind of let them run around the office, and I give them treats, and I talk to their owner about what's going on and give them a chance to kind of chill out a little bit. Then I do an exam and figure out, where they're painful. In Chinese medicine, we also pay very close attention to their tongue, what it looks like, what color it is, and their pulses, how strong they are, and how they feel. That's a big part of Chinese medicine coming to along with the Western information. And then if they're not too big, I have a 175-pound Saint Bernard, and she does not get on a table, but the dogs that fit, I put them on a table with a nice soft rug, and I do an exam, and then I usually do laser first, because laser doesn't hurt at all, and it gives me a chance to touch them and talk to them, and then I put needles in the points that I think are most helpful for whatever condition they've come in with. Obviously, if it's hip dysplasia, I'll put needles in the hip area. A lot of times you also do other points on that meridian, that channel I was talking about. And usually within about 5 minutes, there's a natural release of endorphins that relaxes them. I have dogs that go to sleep while I'm doing it. The first visit, a lot of them are kind of anxious because it's weird that we're all standing around staring at them for the time. But most of them come to love it. They love the cookies. They love the attention. They feel better when they leave. So.
Well, you mentioned laser. What's that process? Well,
so I use a cold laser, which is basically, it's not cold, but it it differentiates it from a cutting, burning laser like, you'd have in surgery. It does not do that. And it's light therapy that decreases inflammation and helps with wound healing. And I think it makes the body more receptive to the needles too. I'll use the laser in the places where I'm going to be putting the needles. And I think that helps relax and prepare their body for that.
Now, as the dog is getting the treatment or the needles, are they stationary, or do any of them want to run and get out of there, or what happens?
Ideally, they're stationary. Most of the time, if I can get them on the table and the owner is there to kind of talk to them and, comfort them, most of the time, everybody is stationary. So I have dogs that will stand up and sit down and lay down and sit up, and if they're anxious or uncomfortable. And usually, like I said, after that 5 minutes, they kind of settle in. I mean, some animals are more challenging than others, but in general, it doesn't hurt. Have you ever had acupuncture?
I haven't, no.
You can hit a tender spot or things like that. That can happen, but generally, acupuncture doesn't hurt. And I'm a gentle needle putter.
How long is the process?
Usually when you put the needles in, and it depends a little bit because, but generally the general answer is about 20 minutes that we leave the needles in. There's other things you can do too, like you can inject liquids into the points, or I also do electroacupuncture, which is similar to setting up a TENS unit. If you know what that is, it adds a little extra strength to the process. But older dogs, sometimes you don't go as long because acupuncture causes a response in there, and you don't want to overdo it on a dog that's already kind of weak. You want to give them enough to help them, but not so much that you sedate them too much.
Now, going back to the one thing you mentioned, the hip issue, how many times does a dog then have to see you in terms of getting relief?
So it depends on how chronic the condition is. And so for instance, with hip dysplasia, what I usually recommend, acupuncture is cumulative. So the first time you do acupuncture, you may feel better a couple of days, and then it kind of tails off. And then if you do it again in a week, it'll last a little longer, and then a third week. So what I usually recommend is an initial schedule of 1 treatment a week for 4 weeks. That way we can see we can see what direction we're going. And then after that, most of my patients have chronic problems, like the hip dysplasia isn't going away,
Right.
where we're controlling pain and increasing circulation. And so those guys usually come in about once a month. Now, if I have a dog that, like say I got one that got sort of smushed in the garage door, so it was an acute, I know it wasn't as bad as it sounds,
Right.
but he hurt his radial nerve in his arm. And so it was an acute problem. It wasn't a chronic problem. And, 3 or 4 treatments and he was better. And that was that. So it really depends on when it happened, how bad it is, and, if we can reasonably heal it or if we're just controlling pain.
Now, as a compliment to you, Dr. Beth, it seems to me that you get, referrals. That the dogs or cats don't give you the referrals themselves, but obviously you welcome them from the owners. But it seems that you also get referrals from other vets?
I do sometimes.
Yeah.
I try to, stay in my lane on what I'm doing so that I can work in partnership with the other veterinarians in town, and we can talk back and forth. And I like to think I really embrace the term holistic because, I have all that training in Western medicine, and sometimes the best combination is acupuncture and some pain medicine, or acupuncture and an herb. But if we can use everything we've got at our disposal to make the dog feel better, each case is individual to me, and we take the best path for them.
And talk a little bit about some of the other things then, that if somebody has a dog or a cat, what might be the typical things that they could work with a veterinarian specializing, such as yourself, in acupuncture? What's it good for, especially?
Yeah, so we mentioned hip dysplasia. There's a condition called spondylosis, which is, and this is something I realized early on, spondylosis is basically kind of arthritis in the spine. And regular pain medicines don't help it very much. Acupuncture really is the best treatment for spondylosis. But another thing I want to make sure I mentioned is, a lot of dogs, especially little long back dogs like dachshunds, they get intervertebral disc disease. And the situation there, and I've seen this more times than I can tell you, a dog is fine on Monday, and then on Tuesday, he's paralyzed in his back end and he can't walk. And that's very traumatizing to everyone. And they go to the vet, and the vet says, well, he's probably slipped the disc in his back, and the surgery will be $5,000. And that's pretty awful when yesterday the dog was fine. So some people don't have $5,000, and they get the impression that then the only choice is to put the little doggy to sleep. But that is not true, because I have brought a lot of those dogs back with acupuncture. So I like to make sure people know that. And a lot of people find me, or sometimes the other vets will send them my way. But there's certainly no harm in trying acupuncture before, you just give up. And I help an awful lot of those dogs.
Well, also not only trying acupuncture, also before you even have the dog go through surgery, aside from the cost factor, it's also,
and it does depend on how severe the problem is. Like if somebody can't, and we probably don't have time to go into all this, but there are different stages of disc disease. And if they're in the early stages, yes, certainly trying acupuncture first is worth it. If it's a later stage, there is a point where surgery is definitely something that should be done. But if you just can't do it, there still sometimes we help those guys. So yeah, I just like for people to know that's out there, because I've brought a lot of them back from that bad place.
And talk also, Dr. Beth, about herbal medicine. You were mentioning that you also work with different medicines. Talk about that process.
Yeah, the fascinating thing about herbal medicine is it is based completely on Chinese diagnosis of illnesses. So it's not like in Western medicine, where if you have an infection, you take an antibiotic. Chinese herbal formulas they really are focused more on the symptoms and not the diagnosis. So in general, they are much gentler. It's much gentler than taking a strong medicine with side effects. But the flip side of that is they generally take longer to work. But sometimes when you have a pet that can't take Western medicines, maybe they have liver disease or something like that, Chinese herbal formulas can be a great option, and you can give them with Western medicine. So sometimes they help in addition to whatever else the dog might need with that.
But at the same token, do supplements come into play at all? Are there certain things?
I use a lot of glucosamine for joint health, and omega-3 fatty acids for inflammatory problems or heart health. There's a lot of supplement options out there too. And
do they help the pets?
Yeah, they do. They do.
And the other thing I'll ask you too, now in terms of the, it's not marijuana based, but like Delta 8 and their, all these other kinds of products, do they help animals as well?
They can. There are just countless CBD hemp-based pet products out there now. And I have found they're supposed to be anti-inflammatory, and I have some patients or some clients that think they really help their dogs with pain. And I think for some animals they do. My dogs can hear me back there now. They're getting excited. But it's very good for those old dogs at night who get restless and want to get up and walk around at night and all that. I have found CBD to be very helpful for those guys, in addition to pain and inflammation.
Well, as I said, when my wife started using it on our cat, I thought it was absurd, but exactly the point you're saying. We have an elderly cat, she's 18, and it seems she takes it at night, and it seems to give her relief, and it seems
Oh,
to
good.
work as well. If people are having issues with their pets, or are there other issues that acupuncture could help with? In other words, you said, for example, appetite. Can acupuncture help with appetite? Or I'll ask you that, and I'll ask you another one as well. But if a dog or cat isn't eating, that's obviously indicative of something. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, usually if an animal is not eating, there is a reason, and you need to find out what that reason is. It could be painful, kidney disease or something like that will make them nauseous and not want to eat. They could have a bad tooth. Cats, if they can't smell or are having a high fever, they won't eat. So yeah, there's a lot of things that can cause it, but there are actual acupuncture points to stimulate appetite too. So in general, if you make an animal feel better, they're more likely to eat.
I'll put you on the spot on another one that's come up with our cat. I imagine other animals as well. Is they're not doing what they're supposed to from going to a bathroom standpoint. Is that sometimes indicative? The cat is peeing inappropriately, or the dog.
Yeah.
Is that sometimes indicative of a problem they have?
Yeah. With cats, it's very interesting with cats. If they're peeing in an inappropriate place,
Right.
you can tell whether it's a behavioral issue or a medical issue. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, by where they urinate. If they're urinating on your clothes or on your bed or things like that, it's usually more of a behavioral thing. Whereas if they go pee in the sink or in the bathtub, it's like they don't want to make a mess, but they want you to know something's wrong.
Right.
I mean, that is really, of course, it's not always true, but it can be. And if they're peeing where they shouldn't, you should definitely have them checked out medically. But if it's a behavioral thing, I have some acupuncture tricks that help with that, because then it's more of an anxiety issue. And acupuncture is very good for anxiety.
Well, it's funny you say that, Dr. Beth, because one solution we came up with was to just get more litter, boxes. So you see our house, it'd say a lot of litter boxes, but they seem to work, with it.
Well, with an older cat, I had a client one time. The cat started peeing in the wrong place, but the litter box was upstairs, and the cat was old and had arthritis and couldn't get up the stairs. And sometimes it's a common sense solution, but yeah, acupuncture can be helpful for that. I see a lot of dogs for urinary incontinence, like they just can't hold their urine, and by working around the nerves that go to the bladder and all, sometimes you can help that too.
Dr. Beth, if folks want to get more information about you or your practice, the best bet is to do what?
The best ways to contact me are either through my website, which is www.ashevilleanimalacupuncture.com. There's a couple of ways to contact me, and my phone number is on there, but my phone number is 828-450-0851.
Okay, I'll have you just repeat that phone number again and the website.
Okay, so it's AshevilleAnimalAcupuncture.com, 828-450-0851.
Okay, and it certainly, what I'm getting from this session, it certainly seems to be something at least folks should consider, especially, you kind of alluded to it, if they're not getting help or relief from their dogs elsewhere. You have almost nothing to lose by trying it, and then...
That's really true. And for chronic issues, it's all about quality of life. And that's what I focus on, is finding the best solution for each individual patient to feel as good as they can for as long as they can.
Okay. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Beth, for being my guest this second half hour on the BLAINESWORLD show. I'd also like to thank Michelle Marshall, my guest the first half hour, Cappy Tizzetti, my producer. Look forward to having you join me next Wednesday at 9 a.m. here on WPVM 103.7 Asheville, North Carolina. And you can also listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. And again, I have to thank you, Dr. Beth, because this was a subject I knew nothing about, and that I guess it's exciting for you to bring information to people who never saw this as an option. And so just thank you very much, and I appreciate you being our guest. And I'm going to sign off now, and if you just stay with me for a second afterwards, We'll go from there. Thanks, folks, for listening.